for Positively Gilbert is because a lot of what is not said. You'll notice it during election season, other times of the year too, if you're on Facebook. But during election season, we get a little anxious. That we start to become sometimes someone that we're not. We begin to say that if you believe in something or if you're for one thing, then you must be against something else, and sometimes that's not the case at all. I am here because now how we see ourselves and how other people see us may be two totally different things. But how I see myself is an empathic person, an empathetic person, and I have a great, deep, and abiding love for my fellow man. I've seen a lot of things. I've been to war and fought wars here on American soil as well. And I'll tell you that nothing is more hurtful than to see people divided by anything, when we're really far more alike than we are different. We have the same hopes, the same fears, we care about the same things, we are looking for the same things. And we often forget that when we are busy putting labels, and you know what I mean, and polarize ourselves. And the bottom line is I believe that as Americans we're much better than that. And maybe today is an opportunity to remind ourselves of that as we get to know the candidates for school board. So, let's see, I have my notes to keep me in line because, sometimes when I get a microphone in my hand, I don't know how to act. So before we get started with questions, which I'd like to direct you to this yellow box over here. If you have questions that you'd like to submit, awesome, that's Lisa holding up that box there. You have questions that you'd like to submit, by all means do so. We ask that we keep the tone respectful. I'm not going to mention that again because we're all grown folks here. When you pose your question, you'll be right over here at this mic here to present your question to the candidates. And they will all get the opportunity to answer unless you have a question directed to a particular candidate. So with our introductions, why don't we get started? It's an alphabetical order. So our first candidate that's going to introduce themselves will be Ron Bellis. Is that Bellis?
You're doing alphabetical. Well, just to introduce myself, I've been here in Gilbert for over 21 years. I've lived in Gilbert for over 21 years. I'm a grandfather and father. We've had 6 of our 7 kids go to school here in Gilbert.
This is seeing out your test and how you do with adversity.
I deal with this kind of stuff every day. I've been broadcasting, so I deal with microphones all the time. Anyway, again, 21 years here, father, grandfather, 6 of our 7 children have gone to Gilbert Public Schools. For the most part, very good experiences, great teachers. I have 7 grandkids in Gilbert schools now with 2 in the pipeline, and got several nieces and nephews that are attending Gilbert Public Schools. So that's part of the reason, one of the major reasons why I'm running, is because I want to make sure that we are able to maintain the high quality of education that Gilbert is known for. And despite a lot of the critics and the cynicism and some of the things that are going on, Gilbert is doing very well. We have a great story to tell, and we need to make sure that we tell that story. And I don't think we've done a good job at the district level of letting folks know the great opportunities they have here in Gilbert. And we've gone from a B 3 years ago to a B district, to an A district, and then to a stronger A district. And we have every school in our district except for 3 that are A's, and those are B's. So we're going in the right direction. We've got solid folks, and we want to keep it that way. One of the other main reasons is because there's been, and I think some of this started several years ago, some of the contention, if you will, when an override was voted on and passed, and the primary push for that override was to get teachers more pay. And that didn't happen. Teachers have been frozen 5 to 7 years in their pay, and that's just unacceptable. And we'll get into that when we start talking about budgets and things like that. But I'm very pro public education. Our state constitution requires us to have the best education as affordable as possible. Actually, it says as free as possible. So we need to work on that as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And our next candidate is Dawn Brimhall.
Thank you very much. Just a little bit about me. I grew up in Boise, Idaho, graduated from Meridian High School a while ago, and came down here to Arizona, moved in with my aunt. She said, we have an extra bed. She has 11 children. I don't know where that extra bed came from, but it was mine, and I'm here. I haven't left. I don't ever want to. Gilbert is home, and it's where I'm raising my children. I have one graduate. She graduated from Mesquite High School in 2011, and I currently have 5 boys that are getting ready to either go through school or finish up. I have a junior and 2 grade schoolers, and then 2 at home with me right now. I appreciate the education my daughter received. I love the choices that she was able to make in her education and that I was able to help her make. I am grateful for Mesquite High School and for what my son is learning now. I want that for my younger children. I want them to be secure in their district. I want them to have teachers that feel secure in their jobs, that they're not the first ones that are going to be cut, that they're not the first ones looked at when there's budget issues. I want them to worry about teaching my children. That's what I want. For years, you know, you always have the teenagers that say, why am I going to school? When am I ever going to use this? Why do we have to do it this way? And I've told them, if you don't like how something happens, change it. Sometimes you have to get involved in the situation. You have to get involved in the area that you want to change, and then you get inside and you work to change it. I can talk really big, and now it's time to stop talking and put my money where my mouth is. So my kids were my biggest inspiration for running for the district, to keep it strong, keep our teachers protected, and to protect the education of our children.
Magnificent. Thank you so much, Dawn. And next, or last and certainly not least, Reed Carr.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I think you're hearing a few common themes here. Like the other two, I moved to Gilbert 18 years ago. In part, I originally moved to Arizona for graduate school, for myself to go to school. We then, when we chose where to live, we chose Gilbert because we wanted the education system. We knew the reputation of Gilbert schools, and so we moved out here and purchased out here. 2 of my kids were educated, meaning they graduated from Gilbert Public Schools. Those 2 attended the public schools 12 of their 13 years. The only year they did not was when we were living and working overseas, and it would have been kind of a long commute. My 2 younger kids, I have a senior and a sophomore. They are both at Highland High School, and we have benefited from the elementary schools. We've benefited from the junior highs. We've benefited from the high schools. We've been involved with the schools to the extent possible at various phases of our life. When we bought in the neighborhood adjacent to where we currently live, we moved into the neighborhood understanding that a school was going to be built on a lot there. We were excited about that, having a Gilbert Public School next to our home. That was perhaps the first time that we got involved when the builder decided that they weren't going to property over to Gilbert Public Schools, and we got involved and fought and said, look, we bought our home in your neighborhood in part because we wanted GPS. And the builder, to their credit, backed down, and we have Carroll Ray Ranch Elementary near our home. So we have been involved with several issues over time and have fought for the schools because we want Gilbert Public Schools. A little bit about myself. My dad was in the military. He was a flyboy, but he was in the Navy instead of the Air Force, sorry. Was a flight instructor in Pensacola for a decade, and really raised me with a appreciation of the military, so thank you for your service, and I see a few other military hats out there, and an appreciation and love of our country. he also raised me with an appreciation for education. He taught at Rice University for a few years, taught at University of Houston. My mom and stepdad are both retired from the university system as administrators and teachers there. My wife's degree was in education. I have taught for online universities and have not to the same extent as a full-time teacher, but have had a couple of late nights grading papers and so on, so I at least have some exposure to that element, but have always valued and loved education. And as now I'm in a phase of my life where I can take my involvement with the schools to the next level, I decided that it was time to get involved, and that's why I'm running for school board.
Thank you, Reed. Ladies and gentlemen, these are our candidates. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to get started. Where's my timekeeper? Bless you, child. Okay. We're going to get started with our questions. We have okay, I got you. So we already have some questions here. Again, I encourage you to submit your questions to our question screeners here over in the yellow box. Those questions for our candidates. We have a timekeeper. These questions will be directed to all candidates. And so we will start, I want to make sure I get this right this time. We will again start with Ron with the answers to these questions. How about 30 seconds response or a minute, 1 minute? Okay, 1 minute to answer each of these questions. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started again with Ron. This question, how do you gain or regain public trust?
Well, you start by being accountable and transparent. You let everybody know what's going on. The money belongs to the people, the taxpayer. And the board and the administration is entrusted with that money. So we need to make sure that everything that's done, that's allowed to be done in public, to be done in public. We're all adults. We know what money needs to be spent and where, and we need to make sure that everybody has that opportunity. There has been some value to that. We've seen some of that. We can watch the board meetings online. Hopefully we'd like to get it to a point where we can see that on cable television. That's, matter of fact, that's what I've been doing with the state for the last 8 years, is bringing the legislative process, the governor, Arizona Corporation Commission, Supreme Court, and others to the public. And that's what I do, and I think that would be a great opportunity for us at the school level to do that as well. People can actually see what's going on, and then you'll gain that trust. But you have to let them know what's happening and not keep secrets.
Thank you, Ron. Dawn.
Just a couple of examples that I've come across just in the last couple months. The zero-based budgeting is something that I've been studying. Back a few months ago when I first started looking at it, it was 4 pages in a summary that did not explain anything. Very simple, very basic, and it was difficult to get in there until you've seen it a few times and gotten into the binders. And anyway, I went back there to look through the summary again, and it had changed. It was now a 9-page glossy presentation type thing that enumerated and cleared up quite a few of the things that I had already been studying. No explanation, it was just changed on the website. It was confusing to me why it would be changed without any kind of a fanfare or just even a little disclaimer saying, this is what we've done and why. The second one would be that the presentation given to the board in June was approved by the board. The number was $313.9 million. Afterwards, and on September 11th, it was changed to 301. It said it was changed. It didn't say why. Those are a couple examples of the transparency we need in Gilbert Public Schools to regain the trust.
Excellent. Thank you, Dawn. Reed.
Thank you. You know, one of the things that I do, I am a CFO for a for-profit company, a private investment company. I'm also the CFO for a nonprofit company. And in both those worlds, when you're attracting investors and when you're attracting donors, transparency is very, very important. You have to let the investors know what they're getting for their money, where you're putting their money, and why it's working for them. So, you know, we need to do some similar things that, frankly, we've done there. One example is we've put an investor portal out. Our investors can look in, they can see every dollar we spent, the day we spent it, who the check was written to, and then get a copy of the check. The school has made some inroads towards some things like that, but in doing that, what it does is it creates a level of trust. We're giving summary documents, we're giving our reports, and they can see the backup when they want to see it. We shouldn't have to rely on Freedom of Information Acts or other inquiries. And there are some things that can be done relatively easy to improve that. Is the yellow bean time?
Yeah, but you can finish your thought.
Sorry, I forgot we had a timekeeper up here, so I'll pay more attention to you. So there are things that we can do such as that. I recognize some of the issues, for example, the $12 million loss that she mentioned. There was a reason for that, and that was that in the presentation, if you go back to the minutes, they left it the same. If you go back to the presentation on the board, they changed it, accounting for a $12 million double add of the federal funds. There was a reason for it, but Don is right. They should have put an explanation on the cover page saying, this is a correcting document, here's what the correction is, and here's what led to it. Because then it gets rid of the questions to begin with. Answer it before the question comes.
Thank you so much, Reed. Okay, all right. So we have a question from the audience.
All right, go ahead.
My name is Mike McClellan, and I noticed that in the first LD12 forum, Common Core was a major issue of discussion. And Mr. Bellis on his website has said that the Common Core English standards are, quote, social engineering. Do the rest of you agree that the Common Core English standards are social engineering? And if you do agree with Mr. Bellis, can you identify specific English standards that are social engineering? Thank you.
Would either of you, do you want to work it out amongst yourselves? Or we'll be happy
I'll
with
go
whoever
first.
decides to go first with that particular answer.
I take it you don't want to hear from Mr. Bellis since you quoted his website.
Thank you.
No, I can't at this time look at the English language standards and say exactly which one is social engineering. I haven't looked into that. That's not the studying and the research that I've done. Because I've done more of an overview of Common Core and delved more into the budget and the numbers. I don't agree with Common Core. I think it was poorly implemented. I believe it was forced, and there was not enough data to inform the public whether this was a good change or not. What I have read is that the standards for Arizona were very comparable to Common Core before it was implemented. And I don't understand why the change was necessary at such an accelerated pace. So no, I can't speak as to the exact social engineering. I'm sure that Mr. Bellis could do so, but I don't agree with Common Core.
Okay, and Reed, and then we're going to end with Ron.
One of the things you have to do, I'll go back to the Gilbert Chamber Forum, in which I talked about many of my concerns about Common Core. So this isn't anything that I haven't articulated at previous forums. I have real concerns about local control, federal control. I have real concerns about the federal government, through money or other means, becoming involved with education, which I do agree and absolutely believe should be a local issue and kept as close to parents. But to specific to Mike's question, I also separate the standards from the curriculum. And I think that's important. I know many people don't, I do. And I give the example, we have a lot of charter schools around us. I don't hear, and I'll just pick on a couple of them that are well known in this community, I don't hear the administrators of Benjamin Franklin overly concerned about Common Core in the curriculum. I don't see the administrators of Heritage Academy overly concerned and talking about Common Core. And when you ask them why, it's because, well, we're already teaching above a level, we're not worried about that. Frankly, we need to take that same approach in our district. We should be teaching above whatever the state standards are to where it's irrelevant. To answer your question specifically, Mike, let's choose a curriculum that meets our values. If that means we do some of our textual readings from the Founding Fathers, let's do that. But we have a choice in what we teach, the curriculum,
even if we don't like the standards, what we're being tested against.
Thank you. Ron?
Well, first of all, you can't separate standards from curriculum, because if you set standards, the testing and the curriculum have to follow, otherwise the standards are useless. Now, as far as two things directly with Mike's question. Interesting to note that John Huppenthal, the current superintendent of schools for the state, agrees with me. Matter of fact, although he didn't have too much of a problem with the math part of Common Core, he had some serious concerns with the, as he put it, the socialist approach that the earth sciences and the language arts was having. I read a first, third, and sixth grade curriculum from Common Core from, I don't remember what state it was, but it doesn't matter. It's some of the things that are being implemented. And the first grade one of the first assignments that the first graders were asked to do was to write a paper that was targeted at the general public. And remember, this is first grade, and to use emotional terms, because they wanted to go after, they wanted the first grader to go after a home builder who was turning a local park into homes. Now, this is first grade, and that's the kind of stuff that's really not necessary at first grade, to teach them how to use emotional words to go after something like attacking home builders because they're going to supposedly destroy a local park. So these are the kind of things that we really don't need in our schools. I mean, if parents want to choose that, then that's fine, but I don't see it going into a public school.
Thank you.
Can I just add a little bit to that? All right, dialogue? Or?
Beautiful.
It's your form. I mean, it's your form, but
I just look like I'm in charge.
I want to be respectful. One of the things that I appreciate this forum is that hopefully we can have a little bit more dialogue versus just the 90-second responses, if that's okay.
It is.
You know, Ron, and I appreciate you are correct that standards will meet or will influence curriculum. However, it's just like football. You know, we can look and say, hey, we have 20-yard end zones in Canadian football. We have 10-yard end zones in American football, a U.S. version of football. But it doesn't influence as the coach, as the school district. I can still choose whether I'm running a power I or whether I'm running a pro set offense or a spread. I still choose how I get across the goal line. Does it influence the plays? Yes. But ultimately, it's our choice as a school board. And if we're doing our job and we're exceeding the standards, we do it in our way, our shape, our fashion.
Thank you. Our next question comes from the audience as well, and this is addressed to all candidates. I'm doing a really bad job with who goes first. Hey, Joe. Thank you. Reed Carr will be first this time. And this question is, how do you view the position of the school board in relation to the administration and parents who are also taxpayers?
Yeah,
Or parents and taxpayers?
yeah, great question. And I take a lot of my perspective from the fact that I've sat on some boards, and I recognize that as a member of a board of directors, you have two primary roles. One is to represent the shareholders, or in this case, the taxpayers, and one is to be an ambassador of the organization that you represent. So you have a dual responsibility that goes both ways to facilitate communication. As representing the taxpayer or the investor or whatever else comparison, you absolutely have a role to make sure that funds are spent properly and in the right direction and towards your strategic vision. You have the responsibility to create a trust with the investor, which we've already talked to. So that is an important element. In terms of your relationship with the CEO, or in this case the superintendent, you work through that person, you work with that person. There are times where you're going to disagree, but you recognize that your responsibility is, in this case, your 1/5 of that. It's not a personal, I don't dictate to you what to do. You work with the others, and the board has supervisory responsibility, not the individual board members.
Excellent. Dawn?
Just going to go back this way.
Yeah, I'm just going to go back this way. Follow my lead.
Awesome. I will do so. The way that I see the board, before I got involved, the school district board was just one of those elected positions that I didn't really pay attention to, and I think most of us didn't. not only that, but as a mom, I just thought, am I even allowed to go talk to them? Can I really go say what what I want to say and have them listen to me? Luckily, I found out that, yeah, I get to talk to them because I'm the one that informs them of how I want to be represented, and it's my responsibility. The board has to be respectful of the people that they represent, because they do represent those people, and they must listen to all views, they must listen to all opinions. They don't necessarily need to agree, but they do need to listen and be respectful while they're doing so. And then with the administration, they do need to do their research and be informed so that they can speak as equals.
Well, the board is elected, so they are directly accountable to the voters, in particular parents and taxpayers. So that is the primary responsibility they have, and that is to represent what the community wants. They're there to set policy, and that policy is sent to the CEO, who in this case is the superintendent, and that superintendent is responsible to carry out the policy of the elected officials, not go off on a tangent and do their own thing and follow some other personal agenda, which we've seen so sometimes. That needs to stop. I think we have a great opportunity with a new superintendent to make a good approach to get back the trust that we talked about earlier, but the main responsibility of the board is to set policy and to oversee all the things that go on in the district through the superintendent, but the superintendent is responsible to the board, not to go off and do his or her own thing. And again, the most important part is that the elected board is responsible to the community.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you all for the answers to those questions. I've had some technical difficulties up here, but these rocks magically appeared on the table to hold things in place, and I love magic, don't you? All right, we have one more question in this section of our forum. And following this will be a speed round. I did not outline that for you, where we ask the candidates very simple questions. They get to choose where those questions come from, and I'll explain that to you shortly. And then after that, we will have another round of questions. Again, I welcome you, I invite you, please, if you have any more questions or if you have direct questions for the candidates, direct your attention to this yellow box over here, and our question screeners will be more than happy to be of assistance to you. We have a question here. It says, would you consider public-private, it's public-private, so I guess public-private's okay. Would you consider public-private partnerships for the district? Those were plosives, right? In radio? All right, so we are going to start, I'm going to direct this question first to Dawn, then Ron, and then we'll finish with Reed. How's that? We're going to keep it lively here. What do you think?
Well, we'll keep it moving.
Okay, then there's going to be a dance after.
Oh, no, please.
Okay.
Nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants to see that. Public-private. It's such a touchy subject because you don't necessarily want to look like you're choosing favorites. And sometimes in those cases, that the public company, or the private company that gets involved with the public schools, it almost looks as if you are playing favorites, and you get entrenched and you build relationships, and you don't want to just go looking for someone else. I think it's a very touchy subject, and a very, very tricky one, and a very fine line that you would walk down. I honestly, I can't speak to it unless I were to have all of the numbers in front of me and able to weigh pros and cons.
Thank you. Great.
May I just clarify the question? Are we talking about public-private, like agreements within the schools and companies coming into schools, or are we talking about public-private, such as the Apple deal because those are two very different questions.
Okay. Lisa, can we clarify that? Thank you.
Please repeat.
Can you repeat what you said?
I wasn't listening to Lisa. I was thinking about lunch. No, Lisa used the example of the partnership between Mercy Gilbert and Campo Verde High School as far as the public-private partnerships or relationships between schools and local businesses. Is that correct? In order to, you got this? Okay. All right, they got this. You got this?
Got it.
They got this.
I support public-private partnerships, but of course, with the caveat always that there's accountability and transparency. The more of that, the safer everybody is, everybody plays on a level playing field, and everybody gets an opportunity to be involved. There are a lot of opportunities out there to enhance what we offer in Gilbert Public Schools, any public school. And there's a lot of private industries that would love to be a part of that, I think, and I think we would welcome their money.
Yeah, and that's why I clarified that question, because they are very different. I apologize for not clarifying it before you went, Don. You know, absolutely. I think you see what's happening at Campo with the biomedical sciences program, and they are having some incredible opportunities to not only learn, but to see how those things are implemented. I can tell you in the 10 years that I was at Intel, I did that. I was, as an Intel dad, I was in the schools around my neighborhood making presentations. It was great because I got in the classroom, I got to see what was going on in the classrooms, and Intel, meanwhile, was donating money to the classrooms for my time. So it was a win-win. Hopefully the presentations I made and other parents made enhanced the education of the kids. I think it did. But it was a win-win for everybody involved. And I got positive feedback, and I think the schools benefited from that money. So in that situation, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you all. Now here comes the part that I believe could be a favorite. In these hermetically sealed envelopes I hold in my hand are what we call, what's that? No, that's an excellent point. Now that that's clarified, does it
Now
help?
that it's clarified, and yes, I can absolutely support a private company wanting to come in and donate the time and energy to the school districts. Absolutely. We need all the help that we can get. We need as much community involvement as we can get. And I think it strengthens us as a town, as a district, and as a people together. So I would absolutely support that.
Thank you.